down. If you've been Venmoing your landlord for the last year for your rent, your security deposit, all that, and you just found out that you've Venmoed the wrong person for the last 13 months, you've actually never Venmoed your landlord, and that person never told you that you were Venmoing the wrong person, and your landlord never realized that you weren't paying your rent. And so now you've paid $18,508 to a random financial advisor in Ohio who claims that his heroin addict sister has spent all the money, and your landlord wants the money right now. So you have to move out of your apartment within a week so you don't get evicted, and now they're going to file a lawsuit against you for $18,508. We're packing.
All right, so listen, before we get started, this is the creator's name. Her name is Cody Lynn, but she goes by Lizzie with the Glizzy on TikTok. Her name is Cody. All right, so this is the video that she posted. As you can see, it got 2.3 million views. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, this story is crazy. You're gonna have to watch the whole thing to like get a full grasp, because honestly, it just kept getting crazier as she was telling it. As you think the story's coming to a solution, it is not. Check out this story and watch it to the end.
Okay, so rightfully so, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of concern, a lot of questions about this situation. It's crazy to say the least. I wish it was a bar hypo. I wish it was a joke. I wish I was doing it just for views. Unfortunately, this is real life. So basically, we're going to go back to the very jump so I can explain this, because I think that there's like a relationship here that matters. So basically, the way that my apartment works is it's a house that's like broken up into apartments, and there's an owner of different units, and like they own a couple of the units in my house, they own a couple of the units in like houses around everything. Like I live in like a downtown area, and I never met the owner. I never talked to the owner, never talked to them. I only talked with the property manager. So when I say my landlord, I'm talking about the property manager. The property manager is who showed me the unit. They're who told me, like, you're going to Venmo for rent, you're going to Venmo your security deposit, you're going to Venmo your first month's rent payment, and you're going to send it to the owner. Totally cool. Now in hindsight, I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, Venmo is not like the best way to pay rent. There is a paper trail with Venmo, obviously. The one issue with Venmoing your rent is like if you pay the wrong person, you're kind of up Craps Creek. I would have loved for it to be like a payment portal or whatever. But what I'm thinking is like, okay, this is some like rich guy. He just owns a couple units. He's like renting isn't his number one source of income. So like he doesn't have like a professional way to pay rent. I don't care to Venmo. Doesn't bother me. So my landlord, the property manager, sends me the owner's Venmo and says, you know, send your first month's rent payment and your security deposit. We'll exchange keys. I send my first month's rent payment. I send my security deposit. On me, I spelled the Venmo name wrong. To my defense, the Venmo I was supposed to be sending it to had no profile picture, and all their transaction history was private. The Venmo that I sent to had no profile picture, and their transaction history was private. And the names are so similar. Like I got one letter wrong, which like one letter is all it takes. But the name is also such like an odd name that like you would not anticipate somebody having the same exact name with one letter difference, the same exact username, one letter difference. That's on me. Had we figured out right then and there that I had sent my security deposit and first month's rent to the wrong person, I just would have had to eat it. Like, okay, I lost that money. I'm going to have to repay it. Like, I'm going to have to pay the actual owner now. We move on, like continue through the lease, whatever. So I sent my security deposit and my first month's rent, and then I text the property manager and I said payment sent. So like me confirming like, hey, did you get the payment? Let's do these keys. He says, great. Here's the plan for us to exchange the keys. I'll put a picture behind me like when it's appropriate. And of course I'm going to block out like people's like personal information because I'm not trying to put anybody on blast. It's a really unfortunate situation for all parties involved. So basically he gives me the keys. I move in. I continue to pay the wrong person for the next 13 months until last Thursday. So last Thursday, at this point, my lease is expired. I'm on like a month to month. I know that. The landlord knows that. He reached out to me in April and he was like, hey, are you planning on re-signing your lease? My lease expires on July 9th, I believe it was. And, are you planning on re-signing your lease? I'm like, yeah, I want to stay here for another year. He never got back in touch with me after that. this landlord, he is so kind. He's a really, really nice person, but the whole practice definitely seemed like fast and loose. I don't really mind that. Like, I live in a college town. It's a pretty like informal setting. It didn't come across as to me like I needed to be like checking XYZ, I need to trail this, and this. This is also my first time renting a place. Like, I've always lived in a house that my parents have owned. So like, I guess that's not true. In undergrad, I lived at a place that like I rented, and it was like, but I paid all my rent up front. I like paid out of a college fund. So this is just a different circumstance for me. I've never been in it before. Anyways, sorry. I don't even know where I was at. Okay, so I was talking about how I'm month to month. So basically, last Thursday, I get a text message from my landlord, and he says, hey, your check for $7,200 bounced. Hold up. I have never wrote a check for $7,200. He's talking about my rent, like my rent check bounced. And I'm like, I never wrote a check for $7,200. I Venmo my payments every single month. I send him a screenshot of my last year. Like, I go to the person I've been Venmoing, click on transaction between you two, and then I send him a screenshot of the last year of rent and all that I'd been sending. And he was like, oops, owner has you confused with somebody else. You're good. And I'm like, whew, okay, thank God. Text me back. Here's the issue. You've been Venmoing the wrong person. I'm like, I have not been Venmoing the wrong person. And then he sends me another screenshot of the owner's Venmo. I compare that to the Venmo I've been Venmoing, and I'm like, that's the same Venmo. What are you talking about? I reply, and I'll put the screenshots behind me. It's comical at this point. I'm laughing. I text back, and I'm like, that's who I'm Venmoing, ? And he's like, no, you spelled it this way. It's spelled this way. And that's finally when I realized I had been paying the wrong person. Like, literally, to look at the usernames, one letter different made all the world of a difference. So anyways, I don't even text the landlord back at this point. I go straight to Venmo. Part 2. It's getting long, sorry. Okay, part 2. So I go straight to Venmo. I go to the person I've been paying that I've now realized is the wrong person. I request the $18,508, and I say, I've been paying you my rent for the last year. You're the wrong person. Please pay me back. I tried to put my email or my phone number in it, and it wouldn't let me. So I just sent the payment request as is. I'm hoping in my head, I'm like, okay, pray to God, this is some old man, like somebody's grandpa that just has a Venmo randomly. He's never spent the money, didn't even realize it's there. He's going to see this payment request come through, and then he's going to send me all my money back. That's what I'm praying for at this point, okay? That's not what happened. So then I get a payment for $1,350. That's what 1 month of my rent is. And the payment like says repayment. It's from the wrong person that I've been paying. And then he comments on it and he says, hey, what's your number? Like, let me call you. I'll put the screenshot behind me. I send him my number. He's like, don't worry, we're going to get this figured out. Great. I'm going to call you at 4 p.m. He calls me at like 3:30. I was at work. I couldn't answer. I call him back at 4. I record the conversation, of course, because where I live is a single consent state. Where he lives is a single consent state. At this point, once I figured out who I'd been Venmoing, I go to Instagram, I go to Facebook. I'm figuring out who the F this person is. At this point, their Venmo transaction history isn't private anymore. So that's pretty much how I figured out who it is. I'm like looking at the people that they Venmoed. I'm going to their Facebook and I'm like confirming the connections. They had Venmoed their parents. So like now I'm seeing their parents' names. I'm verifying like, yep, that's their parent. So I figure out who this person is that I've been paying because I'm thinking my money's gone. I'm never getting this money back. I'm going to have to sue this person to get my money back. So I found them on Facebook. I find out where they live. I find out where they work, like their whole shebang. I'm like calling like securities commissions. Like, can I file a complaint on this person if they don't pay me back? Like they're a financial advisor. Like I'm getting everything lined up because I'm thinking I'm going to call this person at 4 and they're going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have your money, blah, 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 blah. Right? Because I'm like, if you've been accepting $1,400 for the past 13 months, you're not a very trustworthy person, so you're probably not going to give that money back. Anyways, I talked to them at 4. Basically, their story is that they had relatives who passed away, and they thought that these payments had something to do with their relative that passed away. Keep in mind, every single one of my payments that I sent said the apartment's address that I lived in and then rent. So, like, there's no misconstruing that payment as anything other than a rent payment. Whatever. He then says that multiple people have access to his Venmo, and he's asked all the people, like, if they've taken the money out, and they say no. He thinks that his heroin addict sister that has access to the Venmo account took the money out and spent it. Maybe that's true. Very unfortunate if it is true. I don't know how much heroin costs. I would be flabbergasted to believe that somebody could spend almost $19,000 on heroin. Maybe they did. Whatever the case, whether you believe that part of the story or not, the money's gone. So he pretty much tells me, he's like, this is how I can afford to pay you back. And he like tells me how he intends on paying me back. And I tell him, like, listen, I appreciate that. That's not going to work though, because my landlord wants the money now, obviously. And like, I'm going to have to move if like I don't get this money. And he's like, well, that's all I can do. So out of not wanting to sue him, and like, if you're legally savvy at all, you know that like a lawsuit works if the party doesn't intend on paying you. If the party intends on paying you, you're probably going to be better off to just write up a settlement agreement, settle with them that way, as opposed to going through the courts. It's going to be a long process through the courts, and you're not going to get your money any faster, if at all. So to settle with this guy that I'd been paying that way is like the way that I think is best. Then after I get off the phone with him, I call my landlord and I tell him, hey, this is a story that I got. This is what's happening. This dude's going to pay me back. At that point, I said, I'll pay 6 months worth of the rent that should have already been paid, continue paying my rent to stay in the apartment, and then as this dude pays me back, I'll forward that money on to the owner. And he's like, gosh, that's such a horrible circumstance, Cody. The owner's really reasonable. Let me talk to him and let's get this worked out. And I'm thinking like, okay, great. This dude's going to pay me back. I'm going to pay the owner. Like, we're going to all work this out. Like, such an unfortunate circumstance, but we're going to move on. Wrong. I get an email the next day, and it's from the landlord. He CC'd my dad, and he CC'd the owner, and it pretty much says, you have 60 days. We want half of the rent today, right now, and then you have 60 days to get us the other half of rent. So essentially, I had 60 days to get them the $19,000. Okay, so they email me back, and they pretty much say, you have 60 days to pay this $19,000. At this point, this is when, like, my emotions jack up. I am livid at this. Like, I am just so horribly offended. I understand he wants his money. He should have been receiving his money for the last year. At this point, it's their mismanagement of funds and their disorganization that has resulted in us now going 13 months without anybody receiving payment and me paying the wrong person. So that offer for 60 days was like, threw it in my face. Like, this is all your fault. 60 days to pay us $19,000 or get out. We're going to evict you. I'm a 24-year-old in law school. I'm in grad school. I have no money. I am poor. And you expect me to come up with $19,000 in 60 days. Like, that's a slap in the face. You know that's not going to happen. So I'm pissed. Like, I'm pissed. I get in contact with a lawyer who, like, specializes in landlord-tenant law, real estate law, and I talk to her. And we chat about the options, like what's available, blah, blah, blah. I email them back, and I say, this is so unfortunate. Such a horrible offer on your behalf. I'm moving out of the apartment. I don't say anything about payment, nothing. I'm moving out. That's it. Because at this point, I have to think like, okay, I'm in law school. I'm going to have to sit before the bar. I cannot have an eviction on my record. I don't want a lawsuit on my record either. I can explain this lawsuit, but I don't want an eviction on my record. So I'm moving out. Okay, good to go. They email me back, and of course, they're like, oh, crap. Well, you offered to pay 6 months worth of the rent, so why don't you pay the 6 months worth of the rent, and then we'll figure out the rest. And I'm like, no. I offered to pay the 6 month worth of rent, that way I can continue to stay in the apartment. I'm not staying in the apartment anymore. My new offer is I will pay you the money as this man returns it to me. That's my new offer. Of course, they're not happy with that. And I'm like, what are you expecting here? I'm not putting myself out of capital to not have use of the apartment. Like, that doesn't conceptually make sense with me. They're more than welcome to sue me. They have every right to sue me if they so. Anybody has any right to sue anybody over anything. Like, nothing says I'm thinking about you like a lawsuit. I'm glad you're thinking about me. they can sue me. In my head, I've already offered to pay you this money back. There's no question about like, is she going to pay the money? Is she not going to pay the money? I've said I'm going to pay the money. I've drafted a settlement agreement that says how I'm going to pay the money. And you're choosing to not accept that because you would rather sue me. That's fine. You can sue me. Maybe you will get a judgment against you, and maybe you will get the money. Like, a judge is going to determine my income. They're going to put me on a payment plan. I have no income. I'm a grad student. So what is my payment plan going to look like? Probably less than what this dude is paying me back. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to like bash on somebody else's legal counsel. And maybe at the point that we're having these conversations, he hasn't actually spoken with an attorney yet. He's just like, you know, posturing and saying, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. Because they are saying, they're like, if you don't pay the 6 months today, we're going to sue you. That's fine. I'm in law school. A lawsuit doesn't scare me. Sue me. Like, we'll fight this out in court. It's not going to end well for either of us, unfortunately. Like, that just is the way the circumstances. So, as of today, that was a lot of blabbing. As of today, the last thing they said was that they are not agreeing to my settlement offer, which was that I would pay them back as this person pays me. And they're moving forward with a lawsuit. That's fine. I have an attorney now. It's my dad. My dad's an attorney. And they have an attorney. Something gets figured out. I would love to not get sued. I would love to not have to go to court. Sounds like great practice for my future career if I do. I don't know, super unfortunate circumstance. I think all parties are at fault. You could push negligence onto anybody that's here. It's crazy. Do I feel like a freaking idiot? Yeah, for sure. Did I learn my lesson? For freaking sure, dude. But yeah, that's all the tea.
All right, so if you watched the video all the way into the end, I need you to let me know, what do you guys think? Do y'all think Cody here has a case? Because honestly, just listening to what she was saying, it seems like how she said with the courts and how it works is that if they're coming up with a payment plan or they're willing to pay you, then you don't have a case. And the fact is, she's willing to pay them. They just not, maybe they don't believe the fact that the guy who she said is on drugs is going to pay her back. So then they're just trying to make sure they actually get their money back. I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to deal with the hassle of waiting for the drug addict guy to actually give them back the money. Because who's to say that's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? She might have to sue that other guy who took the money this whole time. And at the end of the day, he has a really good excuse. He can say like, hey, I thought this was coming from a family member. You know, and then you find out that it ain't coming from a family member. He's willing to make it work. But at the same time, it's like, I would probably just, bro, I don't know what I would do. I would just be irritated. What would you do in this situation? Like, it's a lose-lose situation. I don't think she's going to come out on top. She might, I don't know. But based off of all of the evidence and the stuff that's going on, this might be a long situation. But at least she got a free lawyer, right? What do y'all think about this in the comment section? Cody winning or losing?